Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about this match. I'm almost certain we're not going to see Mercy, and even if we did, I don't think that would sway our predictions in any which way. Gotta be real with you, I forgot what I predicted, but I'm pretty sure I said that SSG is going to win. Yeah, there we go. I already knew that. 3-1. So, what is that look for?
I'm gonna go against the grain here.
Whoa.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
You know, Space Station, they said they're back in the lab. They said they figured it out. Maybe that's true, and maybe they'll continue their win streak. I think they've consistently been better than VP. But I think this is a resurgent Virtus.pro, and I think it's an opportunity for them, a patch that favors them that I don't think is that good for Space Station and their strengths. And I think if Virtus.pro can pop off, especially eyes on those DPS, you know, if Sana and Shockwave can really take it to the opposition, I think this is actually a pretty good meta for them, and I think with the right map picks, they can bring this series to a win.
It's like you didn't watch the interview with Sparker yesterday. My man's grew a beard, man. He's been grinding. He's been on it. He's been in the lab with Christopher. Like they're ready for this.
I forgot to evaluate the beard in my prediction.
Well, I went with Space Station, as you can probably tell in this one. But I went with a 3-2. I hope this is one to be close, and I'm looking out for the tanks. I think Rajaro has been a standout on D.Va so far and is really comfortable in this meta. Now, is Hadi as equally comfortable between the Winston and the D.Va? I think that is going to be the big question for this series, is how do the two front lines kind of duel each other out and make space for your hitscan players?
Well, lots of questions. Let's hope to find some answers. We are very ready for this match. Let's take a look at what our community thinks. Yeah, there we go, SSG. Well, honestly, that's not a big surprise, though. SSG, they are just a fan favorite. It's really, really difficult to vote against Hadi. Like, they're a great team with so much personality as well. So, like, they've garnered so many fans, even previously, before OWCS even was a thing, before there was Space Station Gaming. So, yeah, it's hard to root against them. Let's see if VP can make something happen here. According to Jake, they can. It's a great spot they're finding themselves in. Let's hear what Mitch and Matt have to say.
I just love that Johnny thought that would be enough to placate the Mercy mains. That's actually just going to make them angrier. I don't think if you acknowledge them, if you acknowledge them, they get angrier.
That's the best analysis I've heard all day.
I was missing the movement tech. What was it missing?
Clip of Mercy being relevant like 5 years ago to throw in.
I don't think Funnymaster did any tech in that whole clip, actually.
Homie was boots on the ground.
Okay, but what skin was he wearing?
I never said it'd be good. I just wanted to show the Mercy gameplay.
What skin was he wearing?
It's the mythic. It's the mythic skin. It's the mythic skin. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, that guy was like a classic COD. Those boots did not leave the ground. You know what I'm saying, big fella? You know what I'm saying? Hey.
Nah. Oh, I'm excited for these matches in EU. We get out of the battle for second place in North America. We get to do some European Overwatch.
Yes, it's way more open, right?
Yeah. Completely.
I think also Virtus.pro really impressed people at the EWC, right? Coming as like sort of a pretty outside chance, that ended up being the top performing EU team. I think that's definitely something to hang their hat on. This conversation about the tanks, I think the death sort of started is an interesting one, because I do think the hero pools differ between Hadi and Rajaro pretty drastically, but Hardy's Winston's good. I don't think he has to play D.Va. There's just no world where I'd see him on that role here, but Rajaro being able to pick that up. Also, like, just being a very good Ramatra player as well in some maps where that's being called for. And a bit of ball. We definitely saw some ball. Even that group stage, right? They played up against SRP check, which we knew they'd just be only playing against Ryan, and Rajaro managed to navigate that pretty well.
I mean, we saw the power of the Wrecking Ball yesterday, right? With Citrus Nightmare versus TSM. So always a threat. Potentially, where looks like both teams potentially hovering over a D.Va pick here early on, which, like, in NA and like some of the other regions, like, D.Va's kind of completely fallen out. It seems like here in EU, both teams on play the D.Va, and we get a Reaper pick here from Sana. So Jake was talking about it a little bit yesterday on the desk. Reaper, we kind of laugh when we see Reaper because he's like such a, I want to say basic hero, right? But like, he's pretty effective in the current meta.
Was the pinch hitter on the Mayhem, I want to say. We'd come in and just play the Reaper entirely. So had a bit of a stint there. Didn't really sort of pan out, but definitely a hero.
The Overwatch League era, having a Reaper specialist, a full-time Reaper
just like the
specialist.
First map of every series. It's the control map. It's legendary stuff. Either way, he's getting to relive that moment here as Virtus.pro get priority. Ball thrown up, but that's going to be pretty ignored by Rajaro. Shockwave gets picked up by an ice spike.
Yeah, that's a long-range, icicle there from Backbone, and the Reaper can be pretty effective against the Mei as well. It's going to be sound barrier here for VP, as they want to commit to try and winning this when that Kitsune rush goes down, but I know Rajaro extremely weak. Yeah, he's going to get
the fact you commit the sound barrier in there, you're at a player disadvantage already, and it's not just any player, it's your Ashe that is out of the picture. Commit the sound barrier, still end up losing it. That is pretty bad for Old Economy. Space Station feeling comfortable now, having a free sound barrier in the next fight.
So they flip the point. Actually, it's not a ton of percentage there for Virtus.pro, and you're going to have the sound barrier here for Space Station to kind of deal with this Kitsune rush that comes on through. I think one of the things, though, was like Reaper is so good within the Kitsune rush, right? We kind of saw that. I know it's like Dallas Fuel, you think back, to grand finals, right? They kind of, the zombie comps use that Reaper within the Kitsune rush is so strong. You see how fast those shotguns go off.
But Blizzard, though, very good at stopping people's fire rate from being increased. It's going to be dodged to some degree by Sauna. Kitsune rush still there for a moment, but takes a huge hit actually as Hardy swings on through the rocket boosters. Bobby's up here at Space Station, have the sound barrier in play, and so the Omnic bodyguard will be dealt with in due course. Psycho with a pulse bomb here to work with. Virtus.pro still not having flipped the point, and conceded the lead to Space Station here. And see Sauna trying to get forward, but the pressure was on him instantly. He has to wraith walk back to the rear of the point. It's Canale going down here, so a lot of that healing off the table now. And a self-destruct for a remake for Rajaro. There won't be much to see when he returns to the fray.
Man, Backbone goes absolutely crazy on the point. Like, they're trying to open up some space VP, right? I know to allow Shockwave to have some kind of like sight lines. So you see Son and Rajaro going really aggressive, but they never able to deal with Backbone on the point. I know he's able to just kind of keep that controlled for Space Station the entire time. Landon builds up to another rush here. Is Space Station looking in control now?
Gala close to a beat. This will be the last best chance for Virtus.pro to take the point back now. So wants to keep that one under wraps as long as possible. Sauna's already made his way in for the most part and getting a lot of attention. It has to be a beat just to get the Reaper out alive, but he's going to turn around and make the Death Blossom play. All the Space Station scatter here. Hardy able to mitigate some of that damage with the defense matrix, and Backbone gets more than he bargained for there on the other side of the wall. So it's a hasty ice block and it's back to work. Blizzard already developed again for the Mei, and another pick on the enemy Ashe shot. Backbone has been so effective at short and long ranges. Gala there, a nice small lobotomy. That's going to be Space Station gaming with the numbers advantage and basically every ultimate they could ask for here.
I mean, the long-range shots there from Backbone are just crazy, right? You pick the Lucio out of this guy. They do a nice job. He puts some damage down onto Shockwave, and then Psycho goes to finish him off. That'll be Space Station taking round number 1. Once they got that point back, it was just a pretty strong performance from them.
Mei only conditionally effective against these more mobile compositions, but on a point like Garden, there are so many chokes to punish your opponents with. And Sauna struggles. I think every time he thinks he has a decent flank angle, he's turned on instantly and has to wraith walk out basically straight away. And in fact, Gala's only sound barrier for the round was sort of forced in order to allow Sauna to stay alive and be a factor in the fight. And then it's a hasty Death Blossom that's just kited away from.
So I would love to see the venture pick here from Space Station Gaming. We saw it in one of their previous series.
Yeah, with the Malga.
They may play with a Malga here, played quite aggressively, where Venture, they start building up these shields, and they're so difficult to take out, as it'll be VP. They'll actually play the Pharah here, so potentially trying to just kind of put down that splash damage, just kind of consistent damage, stay alive. I think it's going to be tough to keep the Diva up here, potentially.
Very telegraphed there from Backbone, but he creates some spacing between Rajaro and the rest of Virtus.pro, which is problematic for a Pharah to get caught out of the action. Hardy takes a face fall here. Cardiac Overdrive already used, trying to slip away, and he gets himself the Mega. It's a pretty big deal. Links up here with some of these flanking players, but Hardy simply wants to reposition. This means that Virtus.pro get priority, and they have the point first.
Yeah, and it's a lot of just splash damage for Space Station to deal with, right? You kind of have the Pharah rockets just kind of spamming through the choke. You end up with the dynamite as well, as they're going to ditch this right away. So they're going to go back to this Mei Diva look.
Pharah's an issue, I think, for Malga in general. Hardy took too much poke damage even there, and Funny Astro got booped out of position with a concussive blast. Yeah. It's an easy pickup for Rajaro. Slam dunk for Virtus.pro, and Space Station again forced out of the map.
Yeah, we saw kind of the beginnings of the end there for Funny Astro with the POV we were on. He got conked forward and then just kind of collapsed on it, looked like, by Rajaro. So big kill there for VP. That's going to give them probably another 10% on the point here. with some of the changes, they're going to have a pretty sizable ultimate advantage.
Back to that May Diva setup.
She's gonna blow.
Hardy, yeah, checks that high ground. The fire is still an issue, and they still don't have an easy way to deal with it. Another concussive blast here to sow a little bit of chaos in the ranks, and almost finding Backbone with some of that damage. Hardy has to chase this one in, but he gives up his mech in order just to put a scratch on Sauna, and well, the ladder's able to recover pretty admirably. Shockwave felled by Funny Astro earlier on there, but no Diva in the fight right now for Space Station Gaming. Close to a beat, but no great opportunity to make use of it here. Maybe they try and play around this May as much as they can. Diva is on the way back to the fight, but Space Station still lacking that tank. And now Kitsune Rush is going to be an issue. Blizzard there eaten up. Rajaro able to shut that down as the ice block came out from Backbone.
Yeah, and this could be one that VP could end up taking quite easily now. They're going to have a later sound barrier coming on in. It's going to be the Rocket Barrage here used, just put down some extra damage. They probably don't even need, self-destruct not even going to really need to be used here because Rajaro not close to getting demeched at the moment, but VP looking to put away this second round. I think, just coming out with this comp early on and making it work and then being able to stick on it's definitely paid off as Rajaro will get quite weak. Sauna's going to switch, so they're going to have to back off of the point here for just a little bit. This is where actually Space Station, you take a little bit of control here, Mitch. You're going to have another Blizzard here for Backbone. You're going to have your Kitsune Rush. You can't lose the May, though. Nice ice wall there from Backbone to keep himself
Backbone,
up.
I think having to move away from the Dynamite before it detonated, though, because it still might have gotten the better of him. Now fighting the left-hand side. Switch off the Fara here for Saunos. When you're not in control of the point, it's really hard to get value out of her. Instant recall having to be used by the Tracer here from Virtus.pro, and Shockwave gets his head ripped off by a kunai. Self-destruct on the high ground there, but meanwhile, it's another kill for the Kiriko. Gala this time brought down. Virtus.pro absolutely struggling here. And Space Station, frankly, can sit on some of these ultimates. Backbone built another Blizzard so quickly for the next fight.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best part here for Space Station is you don't really need to kind of use any of these ultimates, right? You just end up using the Kitsune Rush to win that. You got Beat, you got Blizzard. You're kind of, sitting in a really nice spot. And this is actually going to have VP like a tank in terms of, change in terms of tank. So they'll actually play the Ramatra here. Probably just going to try and, do you try and put pressure on the May here? Do you try and like just kind of charge, one of these targets down and get the Ramatra in there?
This form is going to create a lot of space at the very least for Shockwave here. If Rajaro can get out onto the point. Here's that Nemesis form, and again, everyone has to respect it. Here's that space for the Ash I'm talking about. All the Space Station now forced into the side room. Blizzard also drawn out of them. It does catch Rajaro just the edge of it, but there's enough healing there for the Ramatra to keep him standing. Bob is in play right now, and Hardy's playing it off Bangalore, that high ground, but can't intervene much when it comes to the peel. Sort of ducks back. It's going to be a Suzu expended by Kanao to keep him standing, and Gala died with beat, I say. That's brutal stuff. But still, the Ramatra's paying off now. Funny Astro brought down. Space Station have to fold away from this entirely, and Gala comes back into the fight with a beat. That can only bode well here for the team in orange. With Psycho out of the picture, I think Space Station are in deep trouble.
Yeah, it feels like just an inevitable end here for Space Station. Nice Suzu there actually keeps Hardy up. This will be a sound barrier here for Gala as they come on back in, and this should be enough to seal the deal. But I gotta say, the VP did a tremendous job keeping Rajaro alive. I know when that Blizzard went down, right? I know he kind of got stuck in it for a second there. It was a nice bob from Shockwave that kind of deterred some of the other players from Space Station on following it up, but keeping Rajaro alive there was huge. If you lose your tank in that type of situation, I mean, we're a 99-99 with Space Station in control of the point, so VP end up clutching up in the end.
They got so much value early out of that Fara pick, which, kind of snowballed out of control once Virtus.pro got the point to start the round. Eventually they switched off that, but instantly, just the threat that Ramatra generates in Nemesis form was enough to force all of Space Station into the side room. They got the Blizzard out of them fair, and then Rajaro just manages to stay alive, so great heal here for VP, keeping that tank standing. We've evened it up. The quality of play, excellent from Virtus.pro there. Quite a contrast from the first round. Let's see how they finish the job. It'll be divas for both sides as we head out to Night Market.
What do you think about, May can be quite effective here on this plane, but committing to the May instead of having like a hit scan here. I think the May probably out of all the points probably works best on this one. I just think you probably get a little bit more consistent results with having the Ashe in
you can play off the point here, right, with the May, crucially. So it's pretty hard for Shockwave to actually get good sight lines until you're forcing Virtus.pro to physically contest the point. Sauna also, because they play off the point, doesn't have a good flank. He just kind of runs into the entirety of Space Station in doing so. And here's kind of the issue. Space Station start with a point now. They can play off of it, rotate in and out. Party, such a desperate dive in there.
Oh,
Gives
wow.
up his mech. I'm not sure if he expects just a front load of damage there to ruin him.
Yeah, maybe not. This will actually be an opportunity, a big window here for VP to kind of move on in. They get the ice block, they go in, deal with Backbone. So Hadi will get a mech back, but it'll be too late as VP's already flipped the point.
So what if Backbone still wants to stay on the Mei here? Your opportunities to catch out Virtus.pro with an ice wall are fairly slim. But if they push up against you, you can definitely manufacture an opportunity there.
Well, right. I mean, if they wanted to play hit scan at all, you'd probably think that Sparker would be in the game, right? So you're kind of committed to this type of variation. I mean, looks like they're going to use the Mei wall just to kind of get close to the point.
Yeah, answers like that.
Oh, they
it answers that sort of mid-range pressure here from hit scan in the middle part of the map, and they hope to try and outmaneuver Virtus.pro here with a probe at the front of the point after a quick reposition. But the Mei wall actually ends up getting Hadi demeched there. Spacestation try and cover their retreat with it, but they leave their Diva out to dry.
Yes, it's brutal, right? A really nice rush there from Canal. I like the idea for Space Station, right? You drop that Mei wall. Looks like you're going to rotate to the outside of the point. They kind of just sit there, wait. They come in through the front. I think maybe caught Virtus.pro off a little bit, but then VP answers back fast with their own Kitsune rush. They push on in as VP getting very close to closing this first map out.
I think with the Diva composition for Space Station Gaming, something that was alluded to, I think, in the pre-show. Not Hadi's usual bag of chips. I'm gonna get.
I don't think Hadi's looked like it's bad.
On an individual basis, I think it's totally fine.
I just don't really love the Mei comps. I think we've seen it a few times, and I just don't think it's worked as well as some of the other different kind of variations.
So they do catch Rajaro with a Mei wall right there. He's able to get over it, but not without losing his mech. He had the self-destruct though to refresh it, but Gala going down here to Psycho, crucial pulse bomb find. And I'm pretty sure Backbone picks Shockwave off across the map again, which, if you recall, the first round was a huge component of Space Station winning on Garden.
Yeah, so now Space Station flips point back, right? VP makes the change over to the Ramatra yet again. So this will be a little bit easier for them to kind of get in and brawl with that Mei. And as I say that, Backbone hits some sick icicles yet again at range, where he's provided like crazy value. I think on point one, right? I know it's just going absolutely crazy with those. They will have no opportunity to kind of like eat a blizzard here or whatnot. So maybe Space Station decides to like speed in, kind of catch them off guard, potentially using
I
his
think
ult.
if they're tracking blizzard, switching to the Ramatra is an interesting choice, but Rajaro again creates a good 6 to 7 second window, rather, pushing up onto the point where Space Station likely will have to respect that unless they blizzard him. Shockwave gets picked off again, man. That is 3 fights in a row. The Virtus.pro have lost their Ash off the rip, and they're running out of time. 74% and counting here for Space Station Gaming.
Yeah, a few different times, right? Shockwave's taking an off angle. Actually, they get the kill on the Psycho, and they want to commit. So this will be the beat use here in Kitsune Rush, and they're not able to keep Rajaro up. That's pretty bad here for
VP. Was really hoping, I think, for higher healing throughput as a result of the Kitsune Rush being down, but couldn't make it work. Solar's Pulse just got eaten up there by Hadi. This is good results here for Space Station Gaming so far, and it looks to be getting a little hairy on the point. So funny, Astra get picked off, but Canal goes down, and it is back and forth. But who's going to be here to touch? This is no one from Virtus.pro. Rajaro tries to come back on the Doomfist. There's a Tracer, at least to contest, but Gala's been taken down, and Sauna, really could only touch it once before getting brought down. Finally, and that's an extremely back and forth first map here. It looked like Virtus.pro kind of had that wrapped up, but they switch onto the Ramatra for that fight. They suffer a blizzard. It's obviously the Ramatra that gets caught in it, and Rajaro gets blown up instantly, even with the Kitsune Rush in play.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit of a confidence booster there for Space Station, right? To be able to kind of like have Hadi play that Diva the entire time. Eats a pulse bomb there at the end, played quite well and take map number 1. But they did a great job, isolating their Shockwave a few times, right? You're calling it out. They were able to pick him up, 2-3 fights in a row, where VP never gave themselves a real opportunity there towards the end.
Always like isolating and diving on the Ash. Sometimes it's like because they have to coming out of spawn. Virtus.pro have to move through like those long corridors, which really is annoying to play against Mei in, because she's got 3 icicles headed towards you before you even swing the corner sometimes. It's very, very difficult to get in general. And that was the story of the first map. Backbone really nasty on those right clicks. Why he obviously comes in, especially for these control maps. He has an incredible round and frankly builds Blizzard like one fight to the next, like very, very quickly.
It's so fast. Yeah, I mean, the shots with the icicles, the one on the Shockwave and Gala here, that's one definitely was a highlight here in map number 1. And yeah, you kind of continue to play this May. The second round works out a little bit better for VP. I like the Ramatra switch there towards the end. I'm very curious in what they decide to do in terms of map selection, as that comes up soon. But this one, I don't really think that Space Station, the May, I think, worked really well on the last point, and then even first point, not exactly here.
Let's talk about specifically why you think Rajaro switches off D.Va. Why do you think he likes to pick up the remote? I speculated, of course, is that it's better at creating space for your Ashe, but there must be something else, because they must have tracked that Blizzard in the last round and still switched off the D.Va, sort of denying themselves the opportunity to potentially shut that down.
I mean, Ramatra's just better at like holding the type of like space, right? Yeah, you have the shield, you have the Nemesis form. Like if they want to push in, right, you can just put down loads of damage, whether it be on the D.Va or the Mei. And I think specifically like kind of going after that Mei, right? Not really as worried as the D.Va.
Again, Backbone a real issue for Virtus.pro over the course of that series, but it's been very competitive. I think in general, definitely they looked like they had a little bit of jitters in that first round, right? I think like Gala threw down like a 3-player sound barrier. They tried to commit to the point in a short-handed situation, and maybe we're hoping to use Reaper to that effect, but they sort of couldn't switch it around. Yeah, map selection I think is an interesting question now, because we kind of know what the meta is. We know that Rajaro is pretty comfortable there, but we pointed out that Space Station had very limited issues, I think, getting value out of that D.Va in that composition. I think coming into the main event, we thought that Hardy would probably just stick to the D.Va, because that's what we saw a lot from him through groups.
Yeah.
And rather the Winston, excuse me. We saw that a lot through groups here. But in Europe, I mean, Ents, for example, are really leaning on, their D.Va play instead of bringing Chase into a play that Winston is often. So Hardy looks like he's acclimated just fine.
Yeah, and one thing that was interesting in that first map, like when they bring out the Mei, right, potentially running like a Pharah on the other side of things. So you look at some of the maps, like if you wanted to play D.Va, like Blizzard World, pretty good for D.Va. I think Eichenwald also, interesting shout if you wanted to kind of move away from that. You're looking at like
APAC on Circuit Royal as well. I mean, that Falcons Data Division crazy game. If you want to see Juno gameplay, you should go watch that series. But we saw both teams play D.Va comps, and there was like a Mei. I think there was like a Mei from Zeta against that composition. So we've even seen the D.Va, I guess, her dominance extend to maps where previously, like, it was really just understood that you play poke compositions only on those maps. So yeah, she's definitely picking up that popularity. Don't be sleeping on her.
Yeah, she kind of like went, obviously gets like nerfed a little bit, and then I think people sort of move away and go to the Winston. But it seems like D.Va's starting to,
right?
pick up a little bit.
Severe. That was the August.
I think it was like micro missiles and something else.
Patch, I think.
Yeah, it was like a recent
not
patch.
So long ago. There was actually quite a few changes in that one. So yeah, still though, she seems to have like great effectiveness, especially when it comes to diving. I've seen a lot of times if you're in an under composition, she'll get the nano boost quite happily and go to work with it. So Junkertown, pick here for Virtus.pro. Now, well, I won't use yesterday in NA as an example, because we saw Wrecking Ball.
Ball? Do we see some ball?
Maybe. I will say here that I moved off my mark. Sorry. I like to.
I had a drink of water.
This is actually the real size comparison between the two of us.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's like, I gotta say, Johnny's trying to be you with the shirt today. No.
Oh, the Space Station one.
The Space Station Snuggie thing. Yeah, he's trying to just get, as colorful as you. But I'm happy, that you're dressed a little bit more respectable than Johnny today.
I don't think you've ever said anything to that. Are you feeling okay?
What? No,
I feel like wearing like branded merch gives you an excuse to like kind of wear, whatever a little bit. I feel like Johnny.
The Snuggie does look comfortable. That would be something that, like, hey, if we're in Stockholm and Space Station's there, yeah, hit me up. Bang my line. I might need one of those. But
I mean, I'm pretty sure we had them in Dallas as well, which was pretty warm, I'm thinking. But he goes, you gotta.
Well, Dallas was like a swamp. I mean, it was so hot. You don't really need the Snuggie there. Sparker comes in. This is like a necessity sub here, because you're gonna need some type of like hit scan, right? Whether it be like a Widow or an Ashe.
Yeah, no surprises there. I mean, we sort of saw the Mei pretty much played exclusively there over that first map, which is really where Backbone tends to thrive. On a map like this, though, we have seen like Space Station play. I'm thinking back to maybe even last stage, right? They did try and play like some Widow comps on this map. gapped by Rojo. Never forget. Sparker, that was a tough game for them in general. But obviously, you can play Sigma comps here. You know, we do see them get outmaneuvered on occasion. The Wrecking Ball compositions can, you know, cause a lot of problems in that regard. Yesterday, we saw an Ashe flank a Sigma comp. Just walk around the side of the map and shoot the Sigma back.
Just play Wrecking Ball. We saw how good it was yesterday for Citrus Nightmare. Just play the ball.
Definitely,
why not?
That's likely. But a defensive dive composition here could be an interesting look. We do have a Winston set up here. Obviously, the Brig Ana, the prescribed response.
Yeah, I was going to say that is definitely Space Station we're seeing on the defense before we even kind of saw the outlines. You
don't believe
the HUD pop up, but
we might actually. We might get the winner battle here.
I would say more with the support line, right? With I know Landa playing the Ana and Funny Astro playing the Brig. That's kind of what I was more looking at. Where VP they're going to play Ana Kiri here. I know as their backline.
Okay, little unconventional in fairness. But they aren't trying to run over the top of Space Station, so that speed utility less useful. Sparker versus Shockwave. Quite the matchup, this one, and Shockwave strikes first. Nice little grapple shot there to open things up, but already Virtus.pro starting to go up a gear, really trying to exert their control of this right-hand side. You can see that's where Space Station would like to group up if they're under hit scan pressure, but that's been denied as Shockwave hasn't left this spot. Sauna somehow got snarled up, though, by the defenders, and we actually have an even situation.
Yeah, I wonder if he was like hit with a bio or a shot from the, Ana there. Now Shockwave trying to like hide a little bit, knows that the Winston potentially on the hunt. So it is some good card progress for VP. Off the start, off the pick from Shockwave. I gotta say though, the support line, we've talked about this like I feel like ad nauseum. Like the playing without the Brig here, with the Ana, it's pretty greedy. But Kanale, I mean, comes up with that kill on the Psycho. That's where you kind of have the a little bit more offensive, firepower advantage.
Widow is absolutely useless here. With this space taken away, there's just no room to breathe whatsoever. A matter of time as Virtus.pro slowly encircled and throttled the life out of Space Station. It's all off the back of some of these first picks here. Great opener now for VP.
And Junkertown is like such a different map in terms of like the pace of play, right? Compared to like a lot of other maps in the game. Like it's pretty slow. The sight lines are extremely long, right? You could see a point taken off of like 1-2 fights pretty much. You don't really have to kind of do too much working for some of it. So there'll be walls here for Shockwave as you're gonna have damage dealer change, right? So you're gonna actually have Echo Ashe come into play. So you're gonna ditch the Widow here. You kind of can because the sight lines here, it's a little bit shorter, and then also a little bit easier to dive the Widow on this point of the map.
You can see Hardy doing just that, forcing Shockwave to virtually play from the low ground. He just sits above him there. Here's the dive. Rogero goes in with a nano boost, woken up a little prematurely. And the rest of the follow-up was there for VP. It allows them to snatch up Sparker, but they lose Sauna elsewhere. Sleep there on Hardy during that primal rage. And I think Shockwave's going to have an easy time getting out of this one. Rogero have to fire off that defense matrix. But still, Funny Astro ignores it. Raid Boss is in residence, as Rogero will have to respect this nano on the Brig.
Well, it's not the end of the world here for VP, right? You end up using your nano, and it forces out what? I mean, Hadi uses Primal in the backline trying to deal with Gala and Shockwave, and then they nano the Brig while the Brig is rallying, right? So you get both support ults out and Primal there with just your nano. Like, you feel like that's a worthwhile trade for VP.
Shockwave at least gets to start from a position of power before Hardy comes calling. Finds a headshot on the Winston, but no other real priority targets there. And that poke is so negligible to Hardy that he will not be incentivized to return back to his side of the map anytime soon. Virtus.pro trying to wrap around them, come from the backside. Kitsune rush now into the middle building. It's going to be Funny Astro picked off straight away. Rogero just belts him. And Hardy desperately needs to be topped up.
That's a really nice angle with the Kitsune rush, right? Like, kind of covers a lot of ground as you're trying to take that high ground, and they're just hightailing away with the card. I mean, they very well may capture the second point. Everybody split here for Space Station. It'll be a dupe on the Diva here just to try and hold position on point.
Pressure on Shockwave from here on out as well. Spiker got picked off. Psycho went for a Diva duplication there. Able to buy some time at the very least get Hardy in position. And the focusing beam comes in handy against that Diva mech. Self-destruct covered over by the bubble, but they can't snuck over the line in those last few moments in VP with 4 minutes to play. We're on the final stretch.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I would have liked to actually see them ditch. This is Landon stuck in a rough spot. I would have liked to see them actually kind of ditch the Widow and play the Ashe, like mirror with the Ashe, but Shockwave making the Widow work pretty much that entire phase. Now they have the Infrasight here going in towards the end of the map. So VP setting a pretty good time thus far, and I think kind of like says probably some good things for potentially their defense, right? If they're winning the Widow battle this heavy-handed.
A two-player opportunity to dive on the Widowmaker is huge. It can relieve a lot of pressure, but they basically have to leave the rest of the 3 Space Station players at the mercy of Rajaro. Sparker traded here for Shockwave, so both hit scans down. Infrasight now being popped here for Virtus.pro. This means Shockwave can get in safer and easier, keep tabs on Hardy, not that he's a subtle hero. The Canale was left upon here. VP want to regroup and play around another Nano Diva, potentially.
Yeah, you're going to have to back out. I mean, you lose the Kira, you're in a lot of trouble. Now you lose your Tracer. I wouldn't be surprised if Shockwave changes now, like go over to the Ashe. I think you could have seen this on the second point. I expect it to be Ashe here for Shockwave. So I think this is the right decision. I'd even love to see them play the Brig, but I mean, you kind of committed to this Kiri so far. And you also are very close to a rush. It's going to be difficult to use this rush though, right? Like maybe you TP and try and get high ground and use it across there. Like I don't know how you go about using this rush in this situation. It'll be a primal for Hardy, causing lots of trouble.
Backs out a little earlier than I otherwise would have expected here. Realizes, I think, that he can't commit.
They nano Shockwave, I think that's why.
Forced that out. Now he gets to go in with a nano boost of his own, and he body blocks Shockwave into the corner. He knew he was done. He saw it coming. Nicely done by Hardy. Not always easy to pull that kind of stuff off there. Virtus.pro struggling in these last couple of fights, but that was some investment of ultimates here. Bob, Primal, and also that nano for Hardy.
Yeah, they end up nanoing Shockwave to keep him up, and Hardy using the Primal just going to stay alive and force that out. And then once that's gone, he knows that Shockwave is just like a pretty free target, especially without a Brig there to kind of protect, right? If the Brig had like Rally or something in that situation. Nice dynamite there from Sparker, but gets Suzu'd off right away. Still a big connection.
Yep, Kitsune rush here to start this fight straight across the high ground now. I think Hardy already trying to intervene, already trying to interrupt. It's going to be a Bionade connection on a Sauna that drops him, but eventually Sparker does fall. Can't really control the high ground right now because Space Station, as much as Funny Astro tried to stake his claim, eventually he was riddled with rockets and bullets from Rajaro. So now Cardinal move once more. Still the Pulse Bomb in hand. Self-destruct for a remake in a pinch. Both these teams in pretty similar ultimate positions.
You have a one-player advantage for VP, but the spawns are going to come back pretty fast here for Space Station Gaming. So going to get everybody. This is where the Ashes can really kind of take over. This is where Shockwave will have a little bit more access to high ground, and then also be able to have that long sight line as Canale needs to stay alive here.
So risky.
Not even
Suzu'd himself there as well under that level of pressure from Psycho. Eventually, Canale gives that high ground up. Kart's gotten pretty close now, to be fair. Psycho's still sitting on this Pulse Bomb, though, and sees Rajaro go a little low. Won't be tempted, though, to risk throwing the Pulse away into the defense matrix. There it is, though. Pulse from Sawyer. He lets go of his. He's more decisive in its application. It's going to be Sparker that eats it. Great pressure here from Tracer as they push it on up, and Virtus.pro take a beat after winning that earlier fight. And they're going to be able to get the map done with some time to spare. Not easy at this level.
Yeah, I think they were kind of playing around their nano there, VP, right? They were just kind of like, took a little bit of a beat playing for the nano, and then they get the Bob, and they start picking up some kills, and the nano doesn't even really result in, make the biggest impact there at the end. So they finished with 17 seconds left on the clock, so a little bit of a time bank. I think Space Station really started to clutch up on defense, though, in that last phase. That's where they really started to, put some things together. I think having that natural high ground for Sparker specifically really helped pay off.
Gets in past a Brig here with that Pulse Bomb. Lingers around and takes a second elimination to follow up on the Bionade here. So a lot of focus from VP on this right side room. And I think that, we thought Space Station was starting to stabilize, right? Hardy was able to force a nano boost onto Shockwave and then come back on a second pass and with a nano of his own actually get that elimination. Yeah. So Space Station, a good job trying to isolate Shockwave, who was a big issue for them early in the round.
We'll see VP on defense play the Diva, so that'll be like the biggest difference between these two comps going on right now is potentially running the Brig on offense yet again. I like the Brig, so the Brig setup here with Space Station I like it. I also don't know, like, can they play the Kiriko Ana? Like, probably, you know, not. I would say Funny Astro probably more like Brig Lucio, not exactly like a Kiri player. So see how this goes. Is you can definitely make the Winston work here on offense.
And Brig feels fine against the Diva. Switch off the Widow. Sparker, okay, no, just changing his angle of attack here. Shockwave grappling up. Doesn't see the Widow, so unsure if there's been a switch yet. Well, we actually have Sparker coming out of the Cassidy here, so opting out of the Widow duel entirely, expecting a bit of that upfront pressure here from Virtus.pro.
Well, the Cassidy, I feel like you're going to be so outranged here. Like, I guess you're going to take the space slowly and maybe try and not kind of deal with this Widow, but you know, with the changes to the map, right, the Widow has such great protection here in the back.
See, that's Sparker's issue. You can poke at Shockwave briefly, but really doesn't pose any real threat to the Widowmaker at that range. Hardy will take these small jumps, will give them incremental cart progress across the map. And yeah, the Tracer can pressure Shockwave down to a degree. Hardy also trying to follow up on the dive. They've caught Sauna very close, and Rajaro takes a big hit. So VP with a Kiriko will eventually get Rajaro back in fighting form, but has conceded some space. Karth, though, not moving up, so we don't really see Space Station capitalizing on that moment. And Kala, okay, double Bionade kill as all of Space Station off to group up against Anana.
Yeah, I mean, they all have to kind of like rotate in towards this Mega Health Pack. They're going to get body blocked on in. No way you can kind of rotate around. So you can get there, right? We saw Hottie and Psycho get to the back and try and deal with that Widow. But with the changes to the map, like, you kind of have to like LOS your healers a little bit, right? Like, Landon doesn't have, I mean, that's a long Bionade to hit, right? You know, basically cross map. Where you can play VP with the supports in the back, right? You can have Gala and you know, Canal back there and be able to keep that Widow alive all throughout that, and then you end up rotating into that Mega Health Pack room, get hit with a bio, and you're stuck.
Timing here as there's a recall on Sauna, but Rosaro's going to get the nano boost. Hardy does as well, though. Both tanks able to find both Arnas here. So it's Kiriko versus Brig for healing, and Canal went down soon after. Now this more brawly composition for Space Station works out. A Shockwave was caught outside of the action. Didn't even have a sideline on any of that fight because of where he was playing from.
Yeah, playing pretty safe up here, right? From the high ground. So it's one thing, you kind of get pressured out. You're in that tough spot, but a minute 30, this would be a huge fight for VP to win, right? Because you can probably get it into OT if you're able to win it there. It's going to be 2 kills though, right in favor of Space Station. It's still going to have VP.
Oh, this rally is so good.
That Kitsune rush.
This rally is so good against VP. They're split and they're trying to dive the backline, but Funny Astro has the answer instantly. Canal, no chance to get back to the rest of his team. Rajaro already trying to pull out. Yes, a self-destruct available there, but we'll probably use it for one last attempt to touch it.
Contested. You have the Tracer. You have the Tracer in the D.Va here. So actually, it looks like they do a nice job pushing. Yeah, they push Sauna off, and they do a nice job putting him in a difficult spot, so he's not able to get a contest. So would have been pretty nice if VP could have kind of just like rotated those players, the D.Va, especially the self-destruct. Maybe you could have got everybody back in the fight, made a play there, but nice job for Space Station securing that first point.
Now again, Sparker switching back off the Cassidy. Once more to the Widow. Note that once you can establish like that attacker side high ground, can genuinely challenge Shockwave, who's also made a switch off Widow. Dynamite, real pain in the neck to deal with here for Space Station. But somehow Sparker's able to find a pickle Canal. That's massive. Kiriko already gone. Look where they're playing from. Not even that overextended. Sauna comes to call and it's stuck here, surrounded by 3.
Yes, Hottie just kind of out on his own here, you know, the Primal Rage. Winston just trying to make a play as forces Shockwave completely out of the fight. And you know, it's quite interesting that Space Station decided to bring the Widow in here, right? But not on the first point, right? And like match that Widow. They decided to just play it here in the second part of the map as Gal will have this nano. Definitely needs to be used on Rajaro, probably. Try and hold serve on the point.
Very based skin selection with the Shrike. I feel you, Gala. Bionade there connecting on a Landon of all people. Going to give another nano over to Hardy. And again, it's Shockwave picked off first. Still great recovery here. Rajaro does find some value with that nano, using it to remove Funny Astro. Still landing up here for Space Station. Hardy still standing for the time being, but can't hang in the duel against Steven. Not against those micro rockets. Great peel. Rajaro with presence of mind to at least throw that over Gala, I think, there. Keeps him alive.
Yes, he's making a play here on defense here. Is Psycho going to be able to get out with his life? No, actually going to lose Psycho. So this is going to be just even more time off the clock here. for Space Station. So gonna be quite brutal. Is you know, I feel like the D.Va on defense here, Mitch, like just the access, like, you know, constantly to the high ground, and then just the ability to chase. I feel like you know, the Winston, I think you can play like most of the map, and I actually think Winston's probably, you know, quite good. But I think the D.Va here specifically, you know, with the mobility, definitely pays off.
Impact really spikes under Nano or against bio targets, right?
No one can.
Whereas I think Lijiang is much more consistent in impact over the course of, you know, a round or an engagement. Just a little bit more flexibility in mobility. Rounding here going to be used by Funny Astro, but Psycho overextends into a headshot. Kunai, a classic elimination there for Kanale. Rujaro here with a Byronade, but not bothered at all here. Bob going to keep them relatively safe as it stops Space Station from surging outward outside of Hardy, who has the health pool buffered to do so. But Space Station really come up with no more than they had at the start of this engagement. And they committed a little bit to this fight. Trisha Cassidy here for Sparker.
Yeah, as I think you're just kind of searching, right? And I think just playing the Cassidy here, just trying to put a little bit more pressure onto that D.Va above VP. Winning these few fights in a row, not really investing heavily. You now have double support ult here. It's a massive advantage. They get hit. Hardy with a bio. They're trying to follow it up.
Beautifully done. Hardy and Gala both fall to pulse bombs in that moment. Kanale, though, still standing with a Kitsune Rush in case of emergency. Virtus.pro have their options, but of course Gala going to be a little late back to the fray. 6 seconds of regulation left, and still a long way to push through this phase of the map. Going to have both support ultimates up for Virtus.pro here. Rujaro getting an extra boost, of course, from that Nano. Got to be crucial when you're looking to dive this back line. Landon has his available and may have to use it defensively. Oh, that's brutal. Absolutely devastating. Landon cannot keep Hardy standing. Rujaro with the Nano boost now coming on in. Psycho already brought down. And there you have it. Virtus.pro take Junkertown away, and honestly by a considerable margin. See why it's their map pick. See why it works out so well for them. And I feel like Space Station picked themselves into some rather ugly spots, opting out of the Widow duel, for example. They don't want to go there. Hardy still trying to make it work against Rujaro's D.Va. Very, very oppressive for Space Station to come out and attack in that second phase of the map.
Yeah, I thought the Anakiri worked out on defense quite well, and then also, you know, the D.Va play from Rujaro on defense was really strong. So very impressive stuff there from VP to end up tying this series. And then you kind of look like I got to imagine Space Station wants to take this to a map that they can play a little bit either, you know, more Rush, more Winston, right? Because the D.Va here on Junkertown definitely ended up paying off.
Beautifully done. Kanale actually had some really impactful, you know, like kunai headshots. Even going back to the first round, right, that Kiriko play was fantastic. Here's that first pick. Doesn't actually amount to much because, if I'm not mistaken, Sauna gets caught out briefly after that here. You can see that happen just here. But on a couple of occasions, Space Station all get caught inside that room. On both attack and defense, frankly, they end up there. On the latter case, the second round, they die to a double Bionade kill from Gala as they're sort of all grouped up in there. But so much of the tempo here for this VP team is around that Kitsune Rush, all being able to throw a Nano onto Rujaro. There's a lot of different playbooks, I guess, or rather plays from the book that they can bring out based on some of these key ultimates. And again, I feel like, you know, we saw, Sparker playing like Cassidy into the Widow. You know, like awkwardly maybe having to make some switches there is a little bit uncomfortable for them.
Yeah, I thought that Space Station started to kind of gain a little bit of momentum on that third point defense. They do end up giving the map completion, but they started to, you know, put together a really strong holds consistently. I mean, they burned a lot of clock there, but yeah, on offense, they just never really looked comfortable, right? Whether, you know, it was just kind of Shockwave in the back, you know, playing completely open on the Widow and then having to play some Cassidy and whatnot. It just didn't really seem like they ever got comfortable on the offensive side of things. I think Rujaro definitely, you know, played a big part in that, especially that we really see here benefits of the Nano boots.
Pretty impactful Tracer play as well across the entirety of Junkertown. I'd say the attach rate on Pulse Bombs was very, very high for both sides here. You can see 1.3 to 0.7 KD in general. Virtus.pro having a much cleaner time defensively there. And again, I mean, it's the age-old problem for attacking teams on Junkertown, trying to play into that second phase of the map. You can't pick a super vulnerable, long-range hit scan because it's very hard to make space for them in general. The D.Va player can sit above you or, you know, cycle in towards you and just sort of like we talked about, like effective over a greater sort of proportion of the fight than maybe Winston is.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you end up playing Cassidy, right? You just can't survive, whether you're playing the Widow or the Ashe against the Diva, right? And you just try and play, somebody a little bit sturdier, right? Can survive a little bit more on their own, right? You figure, like, Cassidy, Brig, Ana, pretty difficult to kind of go in and make a play. The issue is they just give up a lot of damage at range, right? Where, especially with the high ground control there, bio grenades hitting Hottie like on the way in, right, making it very difficult. The follow up was great from the rest of the VP team.
Sorno actually was able to dive past the Brig and another hero, in fact, and get a huge stick in the backline on that attacking side. Was able to deal with all of the defensive utility you sort of try and put between your squishy supports and that Tracer. Runasapi going to be the pick here for Space Station. I think we're a little split. I think you can definitely play dive on this map. We've seen some teams attempt rush, but still those more...
They can play Mauga. You can play Mauga, you can play, dive. I think Runasapi is pretty open, it seems like.
Farah, if that is the case. There's obviously...
We did see Citrus Nightmare play the Wrecking Ball here, but that is Citrus Nightmare.
That's extremely unconventional, but that is basically their tagline after they're showing yesterday, sticking on the ball for every single map. So Backbone comes back in here for Sparker. Might imply like a May inclination, or even like, can you make use of Sim here? I'm not really sure.
So what I think VP saw potentially, I'm curious if they decide to run it. Like, they were pretty effective against the May when playing Pharah. You can play Pharah here, like, especially if they're going to try and play, a little bit slower, like May Tracer maybe without like a hit scan, so to speak. You can maybe just play a little bit more defensive and play the Pharah. I think that's an option potentially for Virtus.pro.
Space Station, a little bit lackluster in that previous map here, but Junkertown not necessarily an arena they've always looked to take the game to. This one, though, a little bit more up their alley, I dare say. And again, I mean, like, these two teams have sort of clashed multiple times over the course of the year, but Virtus.pro's really start to come into their own. This team really impressed us, of course, in Riyadh, and now here, expectations are high. We actually looked at the circuit points graphic at the start of Stage 3, and we're like, Virtus.pro are like quite far down. We're thinking that's going to change very quickly, especially there's like a number of teams like, oh yeah, and GG Peps in between them and sort of that qualification zone.
Yeah, EU is going to be, very interesting in terms of qualification. I think that's why, like, these, main events are so important for EMEA, right? Because, like, you have so many teams vying for those spots that are, like, all fairly competitive with each other, right? Like, you're a Space Station and you're kind of like sitting, top of the region, right? You finish something like, fourth here, right? And, Ensign, VP finish up top, or Twisted Minds comes in. So you're in some trouble. So, okay, so it's Backbone comes in for Psycho. So they'll actually probably, I mean, I was going to say maybe play a Pharah of their own here. So definitely not going to play a May here. Maybe, on Runasapi, but looks like potentially hovering that May, which would be quite interesting. Like, I don't love the streets here for May, right?
You can
like
use it effectively in the middle part of the map, because a lot of teams, if they're playing Rush, they try and go to this sort of bottom part here behind the walls. There are pick opportunities for your May here.
There's a lot of spots, though, to kind of like, whether it be like a May wall comes down, you can like use different types of like verticality or whatnot to go around it, or even over.
It's a Sigma, frankly. Someone who lacks the mobility to sort of get over or around those May walls as they come up will have an opportunity for a big pick. Funny Astro there, falling first. Big pressure in the front line from Sauna, who just sort of turned up and started dishing it out. Man, Space Station get crumpled.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's like enough, damage to really kind of make, VP like sweat, so to speak. Like, you can split them off, sure, but like, with the Baptiste, like, you're gonna be able to just survive forever pretty much with Immortality Field, and then all the things that Sigma can provide, right, like Kinetic Grasp and whatnot. They'll actually have Hottie play a Rhine here, so this is gonna be even more aggressive, getting past that Sigma shield. They're gonna play the BAP with it, right? So figure Hottie gets in there, can try and brawl out with that
Play
Sigma.
these corners pretty effectively with the Rhine. Sparker, they're not ready for Sorta to descend upon him. Now Baptiste healing coming in desperately from Landon is going to, for the time being, keep the Ashe standing. It's going to have to be Sauna looking for another pass later. Rajara here, safe staging ground to play with this Sigma from. Charge came in for Ryan there with a backup of the May wall, but Landon got him on the Dynamite on the way in and he is down. Still was able to dispense the Immortality Field though. And that one resulted in Rajaro being picked off, and that's a nice little swing there from Sparker. Blink and you miss it. Wins out the Ash duel. Tried to go, of course, with a solo play onto that immortality field. Didn't quite work out. 2 versus 2 here, but you have a Ryan and a Lucio. Feeling pretty good about this. Tough to catch Sauna, though.
You're against Tracer. You're against Tracer losing, yeah, and Sauna's pretty slippery. You're going to have Rajaro probably back in the fight here as well soon. So even though you don't actually win the fight there, per se, for Virtus.pro, you're not going to give up any, meterage in terms of the bot, right? You're going to get back towards mid-map. Everybody's going to be back at the same time. Now VP, you switch over to the Ramatra. I feel like the Ramatra can definitely go toe-to-toe with the Ryan.
Rajaro more than happy to take this match up as well. Coming off the Sigma now. Beautiful damage there from Backbone, though. Results in a kill on Shockwave, but Lena gets picked again early. Blizzard here to try and respond to the dive, and it will be Rajaro getting caught in that. Probably getting awfully used to it after what we saw in Lijiang Tower. Always the prescribed answer to Ramatra stepping up on you. Jeez, Backbone. Oh my goodness, those right clicks have been on fire today.
Feels like he's connected with every single one, but these fights just get drawn out for so long that it looks like it gets up to a great start for Spacestation. It's like the beat from Gala, and they return with a Blizzard, and they're they end up fighting it and find some kills. But it's the support line of VP who ends up living out in the end. They don't even really move the bot, right? They just kind of send it back towards Spacestation territory because they'll take that fight mid-map again once they're back at full strength.
And they almost had a checkpoint from that first push of the game with the Sigma composition, so no need to hurry here. Hardy taken down by the Pulse Bomb. Gala getting involved there for a quick cleanup. Rajaro steps up now with Nemesis Form, and Shockwave already wants to look for a flanking opportunity. Again, it's Landon suffering scrutiny. I think the Dynamite was fired off a little, or shot at a little bit too early there to get the damage, but Bob timed pretty well. There it is. Space Station get cleaned up.
Yeah, that Bob's. Yeah, that Bob ends up right in the doorway, right? So kind of locks, I believe, Backbone at least inside of that room where Backbone now will play the Venture. So gonna move over to that here to play a little bit more aggressive here with Hottie, right? It can, the maze a little bit better, trying to split the players off and then push in the Venture with the Burrow, right? Can kind of get in there with the Reinhardt and just do big damage straight away.
A checkpoint and some for Virtus.pro already. Space Station struggling on their map pick, by the way. The switch to Venture's been good for Backbone. Extremely gainful. And instantly, he picks off both supports in that fight. Virtus.pro now may be concerned about spacing. They're going to dive in here with Rajaro. They are going to be susceptible, getting knocked around by the Venture pop-ups.
Yeah, I don't think they need to change anything, though. I think this is totally fine for VP. I mean, you lose a fight there, they end up using Beat and the Amp Matrix. You can't make any hasty adjustments after that. You've been really dominating this entire round thus far. So this fight will be quite interesting, though. Shatter plus Bob potential here for Space Station. This will be the Bob early on from Spark.
Bob is going to force Rajaro completely off that line. Rajaro at least does have that Annihilation to work with here. No Blizzard to shut him down, because that's a Backbone switch to Venture instead. The Shatter is definitely, worth some degree of concern. And, Backbone's not been spotted here. Drill Rush to gain some air, and now he's trying to push on a... Oh, Canal couldn't the Mega either. Okay, that was snapped up for him, but elsewhere, the front line of Virtus.pro are smashing Space Station. This whole flank for Backbone is for nothing.
Yeah, and it's a nice Dynamite that's kind of thrown back there from Shockwave to kind of help Canal out as ends up putting down some ticking damage on the Backbone, ends up winning the fight. So Space Station does gain some meterage out of this, though, right? 51. The bad part is, though, the bot's going to get way back into their territory now. As VP set up in a spot here, Mitch, you can get aggressive behind this Annihilation. I imagine that's maybe what you're even... But that's maybe what you're kind of using Shatter for, right? If they use the Annihilation, want to speed in, using the Shatter as a deterrent, potentially that's an option here. But you're gonna have Sound Barrier too.
Have to think Hardy maybe considered it. There it is. It's gonna be a shot. How does it not hit Rajaro? Okay, well, he's chilling and he's in Annihilation, so he's found 2 kills and make it a 3rd here. And Sound Barrier was not even required.
Yeah, I think Rajaro was in the, maybe he was in the air, above the Shatter, kind of vertically, and it just doesn't connect. But yeah, they were saving the Shatter for that Annihilation. He kind of goes and turns and goes to the Shatter, doesn't connect, and that annihilation is massive, right? That gives VP an opportunity to hold on to their beat. Beat plus Bob, you have an Amp Matrix they're playing for here, probably going to try and use this around the corner. Where Space Station, you're in such a difficult spot, right? You hate to throw these support ultimates out just to get back towards the mid-map. That doesn't really gain you much of anything.
Rajaro's playing on that corner, so you know he's more than happy to throw down. A push comes to Sharp. Hardy looking to try and dig him out. Here comes the Bob. Backbone. Oh my goodness, just exposed himself to so much of that damage. Bob also nailed him while he was in midair with that drill rush. Vortex really hitting the backline hard. Great placement from Rajaro there. And Gala still hasn't had to use beat. The beat advantage per se is expired, as Funny Astro's been able to build his, but it's just a sign of how little Virtus.pro have actually had to use to win these fights.
This is just getting from bad to worse here for Space Station, right? You don't even use the support ultimates for VP. Space Station, like, what's the discussion right now? Like, hey, we kind of have to win this fight. You use beat. Though. We're at 2:30 on the clock. I mean, what, you're gonna get a beat back like like towards the end of the round, right? And then there's no path to victory there, right? Unless VP just absolutely fumbles. So Space Station needs definitely a little bit of a miracle here. It'll be an Amp Matrix plus sound barrier using for VP. So they go all in with
Ajax territory there for Gala. Able to get the beat off though just in time regardless, and Space Station had theirs a little bit earlier. Disadvantage going into the later part of the fight, and Hardy's not really been able to garner much attention until now. Bob coming a little bit late was pretty clutch. Now it's Rajaro and Sauna against essentially just Hardy. And Hardy, yeah, just trying to put damage into a blocking Ramatra while Sauna goes to work on him. Free ult charge and a fight one for VP again.
As now VP, they just send the bot deeper into Space Station territory, so it's like you don't even really necessarily need to win the fights. Like, look at the spot that VP's playing from, right? Like, okay, just occupy this space where we feel maybe this comp plays really well, long sightline that they can kind of like run away from the Maga, and even if you lose this, you're going to be up like 40 meters, and you lose. Backbone's got the Titanic Shock as well, right? So you're not going to get a use of that.
For the second time in a row, he dies with ultimate, man. Gets picked off at the start of both of those fights. Just caught out in the open, apparently. Rajaro steps up and soaks all this damage because he's sitting on an annihilation. Nemesis form used. Rajaro.
Yeah, Hardy getting really weak.
Oh, that is dirty from Sorta. Turn up the heat, my son. Lennon and Hardy both grouped up too close for that one. The burst damage is often enough to account for the Malga. Doesn't matter if you have cardiac overdrive or not. More like arrest.
As soon as I said, he's got to live, and we get a view there of a double pulse bomb from Sauna. VP, a map completion here would be impressive. It's Hottie potentially here with the cage fight, right? You want to like cage fight plus tectonic shock, like the combo those ultimates could be pretty good. It's going to be the Bob send in through the Kitsune rush.
A shield thrown back almost to keep Bob alive a bit longer, but Space Station going to ignore it. They're going to try and push up past it. Hardy is able to bring Shockwave down. Rajaro has no reason to expend his ultimate here unless he thinks he can turn it into a 2-kill situation. Stands in the middle, soaks up the damage, lets it be done there and then. 12 seconds left in the map. VP with a massive lead. And Space Station yet to even find that first checkpoint. It's going to be a white-knuckle grip on the reins from here on out for SSG.
Oh, and I mean, for SSG, you hold on to those, two big ultimates that I was talking about with the Maga and the Venture. But you're going to have a sound barrier on the other side. I think VP's in a perfect position to counter it. And even if you lose one fight, VP's probably got 3 fights, right? That they have like in their back pocket to potentially lock this one away.
Good dynamite pressure there from Shockwave. Pulse bomb from Sparker could be a game changer. Here comes the Malga, mostly avoided. Sort of going to back away, though. He's being pursued by Backbone, and there's going to be a sound barrier here for Space Station. VP don't have one. Rajaro can't go for the ultimate here. He does pop it. Okay, a little bit of survivor build, and they've got to keep him standing. The Susu doesn't come in time. Or at least it comes for Space Station where it's needed, rather. That'll be that, though. The pulse bomb there for Sauna, pretty crucial. Space Station running out of legs now. Hardy barely clinging to life. And despite the annihilation not really finding the value it had to, Virtus.pro able to finish the map.
Yeah, they're able to deal with Hottie. I think that's the most dangerous thing there. The Maga in that type of situation with the cardiac overdrive, you're able to deal with him, get him out of the way, and then once the Maga falls, they are a little bit later in the fight. There's not really much staying power for Space Station as I know that is a Spacestation Gaming map pick. That VP looks phenomenal.
VP get to play the style they want. They end up switching to the Ramatra after starting on a Sigma, no less, and feeling very confident. You question the May pick from Backbone. What's it for? What is it supposed to achieve here? We don't really get to see it, play out the maybe way that Backbone had drawn it up. A lot to talk about that map, but also the series, because Junkertown was an absolute banger. Lijiang also very back and forth. So we're going to head over to our desk to break it down. VP looking pretty good, fam. Jake's got to be feeling a little pleased right now.
Oh, yeah. He's glowing like a pregnant woman at this point. Absolutely thrilled and ecstatic about these results. It's a close match. That's what we wanted to see. SSG, I personally, watching them, don't quite feel like they have the grip on the meta, or they have found their stride, their style just yet. There's still a little of shifts going on. On the other side, VP, they're trusting in that double flex support. They're trusting on the explosiveness of their front line there, with DPS players absolutely popping off. Lijiang, I feel like they dropped the spaghetti there a little bit. I felt like they had that one in the back, but then somehow, some way, SSG pulled ahead. I
mean, honestly, I was getting worried for SSG when Lijiang was so incredibly competitive. This map has been a mainstay for Spacestation. I think they're extremely comfortable here on any meta. It's great for their general style of play, but it was very close, and I agree. I think maybe VP could have won that map. Shockwave, though, I feel really came alive on Junkertown. He was tearing up the server on Widow, and Sana carried it from there, right? This clip was like unbelievable, where, I mean, there's a chance for Spacestation to make this hold, but when Sana does this, it evaporates. And then we go to Runasapi, where continuing that extreme dominance from Hitscan Tracer. I talked about these two players, but they've really, I think, gone above and beyond, where Psycho's been a super exciting Tracer to watch for this whole year. For me, this has been the Sana and Shockwave show today.
Yeah, and it was really impressive, especially during Junkertown, to see under how much pressure Hadi was on, despite not playing against a Brig, right? Because we saw Shockwave repeatedly just hit like Widowmaker headshots on Hadi, and that's making him fall back a bit more. You can't pursue these on us. You can't pursue these Widowmakers as much. So you're kind of forced to retreat, which gives more space in turn to Virtus.pro. So it's been really impressive so far by Virtus.pro, and now they also have map pick going into either hybrid or Flashpoint.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see where they take us. You just mentioned how Hadi is not going up against the Brig. This is something that, Jake, initially, looking at Junkertown especially, you wanted to criticize VP for not running that Brig and just sticking to their guns. Their Kiri was owning.
I mean, Kiri just keeps killing the Tracer. She's kind of doing the job that Brig would otherwise be doing. So I can't really criticize it. If your Kiri can perform on that level and consistently find picks, I mean, that's the type of level, that's the level of skill that has made VP the team who has probably preferred double flex more than anyone else, because they know they can bring the heat. On a map like Junkertown, those vertical mobilities for Kiri, opportunity to make some flanks. Yeah, sometimes it got punished, but more often than not, it was coming up with kills, which is huge. And I mean, that just puts so much more pressure on someone like Hadi to find those dives. And as you say, I mean, I think the consistency with which Shockwave is headshotting Hadi, it's not going to kill the Winston, right? But it's a big deal to lose all your armor on Winston. You basically have to instantly retreat, instantly lose map control, and the game snowballs out of control really quick from there, especially if you're playing this Kiri comp that can just keep pouring on the aggression.
Yeah, and you saw especially, like, Hadi tried. He tried to mitigate that by, quickly just mid-air, turning 180 degrees, hiding your head so you can't be headshot mid-leap. But, like, in certain scenarios on the map, like, it's just not viable for you to like turn around while you're jumping, right? And so, yeah, it was brutal to see Hadi under so much pressure there.
Johnny, where will Spacestation Gaming take us here? How can they somehow achieve to actually play into their own comfort zones? Well, there's the answer right there, Johnny.
There's the answer right there.
Quickly walk us through their homework.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? You want to avoid this dive matchup by now. I think we can firmly say that, you don't want to try to play this Brig on a kind of composition, right? Because it doesn't feel like they're playing that 100%. Makes sense. New Dunk City, something we've been harping about all week, of course. If you're not quite confident in that matchup, take yourself to New Dunk City.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I mean, this is like, I think they want to play Mauga, which is a kind of another comfort zone comp for SSG. They really like those like Deathball Rush comps, but that means we do have a hybrid pick for map 5, which could be great for VP.
Well, let's find out if the match point for VP will work out and SSG drops down to the lower. I'm sure they try everything they can to stop that from happening. Mitch, Matt, please take it away.
Thank you very much, gang. Psycho subbing in here for SSG over Backbone, bringing the Tracer presence back. It also does mean that probably doesn't give them like a real venture option if they want to play it. Oh, right, so Backbone stays in, sorry. So it is the venture and the Tracer setup here around the Malga, as was kind of alluded to on the desk.
Yeah, this would have to be an all-in like rush style of play. I think it was also interesting, noting what the desk had mentioned, that like this means we do have a game 5 hybrid, which is quite rare. We typically have the hybrid escort picked rather early on, so pretty big difference here in this series. Where like Space Station, though, they know that this is obviously a must-win scenario. You go with a rush, you try and win here, and if you do, you kind of deal with whatever goes on in the hybrid in game 5.
Still, Space Station will be contending with the Sauna Farah, which we saw on map number 1, caused them a lot of issues early on Lijiang Tower, and the poke damage already amounting to quite a lot of frustration here for SSG. Sauna having to back up a little bit there, getting ministered to by Canale, and having to really just pound this Malga over and over again. Cardiac Overdrive popped, run out of the corner is Hardy, but he cannot get away. Sauna is all over this.
Yeah, there's so much damage coming out from the far early on. As Backbone takes out 2, gets Canale in another, but I don't think that's going to be enough to end up kind of winning this fight. As the point, though, still not taken here by VP.
Pretty close fight in the end. Ends up being a 1v2 that Funny Astro obviously has to bow out of. Good value there at the end of the fight for the Venture by Backbone. And Sauna's going to be switching off the Farah here.
They don't get the point. Funny Astro goes in and contests there for a second, so just trying to maybe contest and then get Hottie back in the fight and maybe see if he can kind of stay alive. But yeah, now they actually get the point. So a while to get an actual cap. I like the Echo. Echo we've seen actually have a really good success here with some of the changes to Farah. But man, Canale again. Jake, I think, talked about it, being able to play a little bit maybe of a greedier backline here. VP has made it work so well. And another change here for Space Station, Mitch. Hottie now over to Winston, and then they're going to go away from the Echo right away back to Tracer. So a lot of swapping here for Space Station Gaming, trying to figure out what to do.
Exploit Shockwave, now not sort of grouped up with a backline that has that hard CC. It's just a Lucio Kiriko shell. Accretion goes airborne there. Backbone pops up. It's going to be Hardy falling first. Rojaro must have caught him on the approach there. Tectonic Shock mostly shrugged off here by the shielding of Virtus.pro. Funny Astro will be the next to fall. Space Station have not been able to come up with the answer for Virtus.pro. So far in this series, this map, absolutely no exception.
So, man, VP off to a tremendous start. Like, really, we talk about, like, Ensign Space Station at the top of EMEA, but, man, VP making a statement here, looking extremely good against Space Station. Really kind of having, like, when you see Space Station surging for answers, it seems like VP always has, the next option ready to go and playing it at an extremely high level. It's also good to see kind of like a Shockwave back, playing at an extremely high level, right? I know somebody who, once he came onto the scene, right, we had extremely like high hopes and expectations. Ends up on a bunch of teams that, aren't exactly the best, right? But
I won't tolerate Philly Fusion slander here. No, thank you, sir. See, you've cursed him. He was on good teams. Don't worry, Shockwave. Forget about it. Accretion attempt there for Rojaro. His Tracer lurking. Backbone going to fall to the pulse by Mirren and Bob. Doing a heck of a lot of heavy lifting. Funny Astro brought down. Stick on Rojaro, though. He knows his goose is cooked there. Getting a little bit dangerous now for VP. Able to pick up Landon now. That's a little bit scary for Hardy. Let's back up for him. Does he commit a primal to this fight, or can he hang regardless? He and Psycho able to combine to deal with Gala, now he will throw the primal in. Try and secure the cap, or at least stop it for Virtus.pro.
Yeah, and it was Gala and Canale just trying to keep each other up. They finally chased down Canale. They had gotten Gala a little bit earlier. This should be Space Station after a really drawn-out fight, taking the point. But this is going to have VP with an opportunity to just go over, now play the Diva. So, they just are doing a great job just kind of like counter-comping each other, right?
Yeah, we have the Venture obviously combined with the Winston now, so still an X mark for Backbone to dive in, join Hardy on some of these engagements, but a bit less smooth as compared to the Malga comps that we saw. Continuing rush available for both teams here. Expect volatility. I tell you what, that's what Kiriko does. Right click finds the connection onto Shockwave. And another cleanup here for SSG. Puts Virtus.pro on 1-5 territory.
Yeah, so this is a nice bounce back here from Space Station is this is going to be a brutal stagger here on Rajaro as well. So now you're not going to have this diva for a pretty long time. I like this decision from Space Station as well. See if anybody's pushed up a little bit further. You can get a kill here and really put away this second flashpoint, but they don't find anybody. They have to back up.
There would have been it. Virtus.pro have one more chance. Here's an early rush though from Space Station. Again, they want to surge forward and find something early. Okay, Echo under pressure. Shockwave got nowhere to go. Gets brought down now and puts Virtus.pro in a 4 versus 5. Pulse bomb here for Psycho as well. Surely looking for an ideal target as Canal able to throw that Kitsune rush down. Try and make this work with 4. It's just too much. Rajaro desuited instantly. Tectonic Shock finding tons of value against the Diva comp. And that'll be that. Space Station fire back awfully quick and managing to maneuver themselves into a favorable comp.
Yeah, so now we'll see if they can kind of keep this going, right, as they tie it up here. 1 flashpoint apiece, but the flashpoint pops up right next to them. I mean, that is as good as you can get, right? I mean, you're going to be able to kind of control this space now for Space Station Gaming. So before they kind of left Shockwave out to dry a little bit there for VP, they actually ended up just kind of like running past them and going to try and take point, force them back. But I think Space Station very patient. You know, took Shockwave out, double back for the point, and there's never really a real threat.
So exploitable. We've seen on multiple occasions that Shockwave just hasn't had the mobility to do much after this full commitment comes in from Hardy and Backbone. Another rough start for Virtus.pro with this Echo setup. Gonna stick to it for now, but it has struggled.
Man, VP. What do you think about the Echo so far? Like, I like the Echo. I don't know. Well, what would you play, right? I mean, you're not really gonna play like Ashe and Tracer into like a Winston Venture Tracer, right? The Echo does provide you like some burst, right? If you can get somebody quite low. It's just they're not really finding it.
Well, no, it's because the Echo gets found first. Space Station are being really proactive on these Winston dives. Something that they're known for universally. And I think the Venture adds plenty to them. They have like 2 diving DPS with this Tracer Venture setup. Shockwave has to be very respectful and virtually play in the skybox if he doesn't have the dupe up. Winston pushing out might be a dupe opportunity here. Yeah, sees the Primal, says, okay, I'm not going to get a kill with the focusing beam, but I can get another monkey on the field. Kitsune rush again. This time Canale gets bowled over early, and Hardy's Primal Rage is about as effective as it always is, to the tune of a kill on Shockwave.
Another easy flashpoint as well here for Space Station, right? Could you play like Cassidy potentially, right? Like we saw Sparker trying to do that. There it is. Yeah, so you could play Cassidy. So that was kind of like the first thing that you kind of like logically came into mind, right? Play Cassidy against it. You know, try and punish the dive a little bit with a little bit more survivability. So VP making that adjustment. I think this will probably play out better than the Echo. That's not really saying much since they got like pretty much dominated playing the Echo, but I think this should be a little bit easier to kind of play around.
This is at least a flashpoint that plays more to his effective range, but he can't interact with the Venture for most of the time when she's burrowed. And also, Cassidy's fine when you dive by 1 person, but when you dive by 3, it feels far less safe. Here's Kitsune rush now. This is going to get Virtus.pro back on the point. It's going to be Landon falling first. Shockwave making short work of the Kiriko. The switch to the Cassidy yielding results. And finally, VP can come up for air.
Yeah, I mean, Cassie's another hero, kind of like we were talking about. Shockwave picked up another kill. Kind of like the Reaper, right? Pretty effective inside that Kitsune rush. So they drop Canale's Kitsune rush there right at the start of the point, and they get aggressive push on through. Kill some of the other players.
Hero pulls here for Space Station map because Backbone can't switch to play Ashe necessarily. Right, Spark is not in the game here, so a little bit hard to exploit the Cassidy.
No, yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of path to exploiting the Cassidy is like, well, I mean, just I think the VP in general, right, is that okay, we can continue to play this dive at a high level, right, and the Cassidy doesn't work for Shockwave. They really have no other option, right? Is that they have to use the sound barrier there as they push on in, trying to flip the point here because VP getting very close to taking this flashpoint.
Well, sound barrier there is a huge boon for Space Station, but it's taken them an awful long time to cap this point back from VP. Funny Astro though made good use of it. And at least SSG can hold on to these DPS ultimates and have a Primal to work with. Honestly, they're looking very, very good here for a second fight win. But at this point, all VP need to do is win once. Maybe it's a big pulse bomb, takes down a support. 1 or more players, that would be massive. Gala, if they can build into a sound barrier heading into this fight, it's going to help them against the DPS ultimate combo.
Or I think at VP, you just take a fight fast, right? Get them to use an ultimate or two, and then kind of come back potentially on top. I think that's like a path here as well, right? As Sauna looking for maybe a pulse bomb here. Doesn't want to stick it on a backbone. Backbone kind of slide out of that. Looks like they're trying to put a lot of pressure on Hadi. This is going to be the tectonic shot.
just respects it. Everybody grouped up though. So Virtus.pro don't end up taking that quick fight, but they do draw out one DPS ultimate. Gonna be enough. Katrina Rush still up here for Landon. Virtus.pro, they have all their support ultimates. It's got to have to be here they go. Try and stay alive the map, but a dive comes in from Hadi pretty much instantly. He's low, but he has primal rage available. Sound barrier came out belatedly for Virtus.pro, but it's already been chewed through. Psycho goes down though. Mid-laner following next, and Shockwave gives it a respectful distance. As long as VP can contest adequately here, they'll be fine. See Hadi able to chase Canal down, though. There's no supports left. And oh, Shockwave, no! Loses out to the bubble dance. Still, VP able to flip the point. Short-lived, though, it may be. Backbone already coming in to pressure Rajaro down. Can't burrow back in, though. 2 versus 2 yet again. Storm with the pulse bomb doesn't quite find a connection once more. Hadi is very healthy, but support is coming. Rajaro needs the healing desperately from Canal, and it's not quick enough. He has to give up the mech, but a self-destruct means he can get back in. Had to be a touch there briefly for Sauna. He drops the toe onto the point, and the fight does continue. Hadi playing around the pillar, back it up now. Shockwave here on the Echo. Try and get some of those cooldowns out and burst down these individuals, but a great pulse for Psycho with Space Station. Find themselves with a pulse bomb and a right time. Sound Barrier also a big player in this fight. And Funny Astro doubles down with an elimination on Rajaro after the D-Mech now. It's all going to fall apart for VP. Space Station live in the brawl, molded by it, and this is where they thrive. They're going to take us to a 5th map.
It is the sound barrier there from Funny Astro that puts SSG over the top there at the end. Just kind of chaos, right? I mean, Hadi picking up that 2K is massive there. Gets Canal, and then we were on with Shockwave, and Shockwave's actually trying to use the mag grenade to maybe stop him from going and getting on the Canal with a bubble in the way, and then kind of dancing on both sides of it. I mean, that was nasty stuff.
Hadi ends up getting so much value there, and it's what allows ultimately Space Station to come back in and retake the point. That's the kind of thing you clip. Hardy's going to be holding on to that one for a while. That was really, really nicely done. At very low HP that Winston able to win that fight out. And Acacia looked pretty good though up until that point. We talked about the switch, right, against the Venture Tracer composition and the dive. There's a lot of stopping power behind the mag grenade. And of course, being able to just dish out great damage. I think the first pick in that fight was a Cassidy kill on a Kiriko. So nice switch from VP. It's a little bit too little, too late in the day to bounce back.
But VP gets control here in game 5, right? In terms of like what we're going to see be played, right? And with hybrid, like a bunch of different options in the pool that potentially could give some trouble for Space Station. So take a look at some of the highlights here. It started off really well for Virtus.pro.
Pick, I think for Sauna was pretty annoying for the Malga composition to deal with. Sauna eventually switches off that as he sees Hadi opt out of the Malga play at all. We do know that Space Station prefer to play that style if they can get it, but I think against the Pharah it's just too much. The Echo switch here for Shockwave felt like it was quite exploitable. We got picked early in a fair few of these fights. We did at least see a Winston Duke that amounted to absolutely nothing here. Combined really nicely, of course, with Landon's Kitsune Rush, which again increases your bubble uptime. It's pretty annoying to play against a Winston inside that ability because of the haste buff that it confers. And although the Venture play was pretty darn solid for Backbone, we saw earlier on in the series Backbone play it and got caught out in the open like a fair bit at the start of fights. Maybe it was on Runasapi, I think. Found he struggled there, but this time it was much tighter, much cleaner looks for the Venture.
Yeah, I like the Cassidy swap, just probably a little bit too late. I think like the Echo didn't really kind of pay off. That was just so nasty. I mean, the play there from Hadi is just sick. And then just the sound barrier at the end. I mean, there's no way that they're going to be able to kind of survive on through that with the sound barrier and nothing to work with for VP. So game 5 hybrid. You think of some of the maps in the pool. The first one that kind of jumped into my mind was maybe Blizzard World, right? Blizzard World, like Diva's pretty strong there. You can play Sigma if you wanted, like at range, right? Another map that like kind of forces long range hit scan potentially, right? So that could be an option potentially, I think, for VP.
VP, of course, is King's Row in the pool. We saw Space Station play that recently. That's where the infamous Funny Astro Mercy gameplay was sourced from. Saw towards the end of the map there. Again, we saw them play the Pharaoh, had pretty good effectiveness, at least in that last phase of the map. So
It just feels like Kings Row, though. You can play like some rush at different parts of the map, which like it feels like that's not what VP would want to do.
It also enables the sim comps
feels
as
like,
well from Space Station if they want to like use the Ryan.
It feels like VP wants to play more. Keep Shockwave on Ashe, or a map that you could play like consistent hit scan, and then play like Diva, Sigma, Ram. Not really kind of venture. Into like that Maga, potentially even like Reinhardt for a team like SSG territory.
Kings Row is still an option. Like I think Ramatch is really serviceable on that map in general. So Rajaro's looked particularly strong. I just don't know if it gives you like a massive edge if you try to sort of force that dive style. But we know like VP's bread is definitely buttered on the Ramatra side of things, and yeah.
So we'll go to Kings Row.
We go to Kings Row.
Right.
Obviously, Blizzard World opens them up to maybe have like a matchup in a Hardy's Winston. SSG's dive has looked decent, I think. They even managed to get away with Diva at the start of the series, but mostly we've seen Hardy on that Winston here. So BFE fancying a little bit more boots on the ground Overwatch. You can mix in Farah here as well, especially to start with. Sauna can pick that up and try and pressure with a lot of that splash damage, especially if SSG end up playing the less mobile sort of Malga or Reinhardt looks. More the latter is more likely. But yeah, it does open you up for some of those Symmetra shenanigans. So Backbone actually gets subbed out here. So it's a Psycho Sparker look, which means that the odds of us seeing like a May here are lower. Not that Psycho hasn't played that, but we might end up seeing like Ash Tracer look here instead.
Yeah, I think, I think you're going to need an Ash, right? You're going to need like long range hit scan. I think that's like the thing here on Kings Row, right? So you lose Backbone. I think this definitely gives you a little bit of idea for VP, like what you're going to see on the other side of things, right? But I don't think it should be like that big of a surprise, right? In terms of you could play like, I guess, like Psycho on like a Echo, like you play Echo Ash. We've seen teams like play some of that, so that's potentially an option. But yeah, I think you kind of have a great idea for VP exactly what you're going to see from Space Station.
Of course, Season 12 is officially live, folks. So if you jump into the game, of course, the Battle Pass is up. It is fresh and new with a chance to earn those mythic prisms for later use in the store. Whatever you done, well, please.
Or you could be like Mitch. He just goes in and just swipes his card, just buys all the mythic prisms, just dominates the mythic store with ease, right?
I just dominated with my immense bulk and commanding presence. I mean, maybe back in the Overwatch League salary days it might have been an option, but you were the one that worked for Blizzard that basically had free Blizzbucks. We talked about this. You literally buy the whole battle pass on the day it released back then.
You just gotta budget better. Griffin doesn't need some more. Griffin doesn't need more markers. You need that mythic. You need mythic prisms.
You're totally projecting, bro. You always have the titles of every battle pass. It's crazy, bro. Like all the hacker ones, bro. Day one, the mythic Genji. That's crazy, man. You're putting that on me. Unreal. We won't see a ball here for Rajaro. We're definitely not a ball map, folks. Don't get too ahead of yourselves. Maybe we do see the Iliari Ana setup though here for Virtus.pro. Something that we haven't seen so far in this series, but has kind of been a definitive look for this team in the past.
Yes. I like this. I like this look here from Space Station. Like I think Echo is actually really strong. Like I think what we saw from New York City is probably not indicative of the hero's strength. I think Echo can actually be really useful, especially against Diva comps, right? So Space Station also playing that Ana Brig backline. It's a VP. This would be quite interesting, right? Playing the Ilari Ana. So it's a comp that's a little bit more greedy. Song looking for a pick here.
Funny Astro checking that corner.
Anything? Yeah. I don't really love the Ilari Ana. Like it doesn't really play.
Not great versus Widow.
Yeah, and they switch off it right away. Okay, so I like the decision. Well, it's like it's fine against like a Widow and whatnot. It pumps out a lot of damage, right? It's just like easily collapsible by the Diva, and specifically like even an Echo, right?
Yeah, Outburst's not the greatest escapability. It's like a smaller coach gun, I guess. It's not really what you need though if there's a full dive coming your way. Spark probably not intending for the Poison Mine to end up on the corner, but he'll take it. Point being here contested early by Virtus.pro. They've moved up and ostensibly to create a little bit of space here for Shockwave, who has to respect Spark, or even if those sight lines are currently being quite restricted, it doesn't seem to matter. He's found an opportunity. Shockwave lurking by the hotel. Headshot for Sparker as Hardy held that Ash in place.
It's pretty tough start here for VP, right? You have a support go down right away at the hands of Sparker, and then the next fight not able to really kind of make any headway towards that high ground, and then now Space Station kind of in control here on defense. So Sparker with some great lines of sight here as just putting shots into Rajaro makes it very difficult, right? Like, he can't go down and kind of contest the point with that low HP pool, but then can't exactly kind of push in and make a play for that high ground. Also really difficult to make a play for Sparker when you have that
Now
break
trying
there.
to go for a dive here, or at least pressure that Widowmaker with some of those kunai. Has the flexibility, of course, to return to the fray in a moment's notice with swift step, so doesn't cost them too much. Rajaro just goes up there. Psycho evidently not with the mobility to avoid the scrutiny of the Diva. Hardy gets the nano. Everyone avoids it for the time being, and instead Rajaro goes up to Sparker on that high ground. Landon falls. Bionade connects with him, but Hardy was never going to give up. Gala sunk his teeth in and refused to let go. Unfortunately, the rest of his team couldn't back it up. 2 kills for Nano. Diva in that fight for Space Station still won't get them there. It's Virtus.pro with the card in possession.
Yes, they finally kind of break that high ground. Instead of it takes a while, right? A lot of just like, poking and prodding to get up there. So now Space Station, they'll actually drop the hit scan. They'll play the Tracer here. So Tracer Echo really, all out aggression here. Is look at this VP taking a sneaky position here, Mitch. Trying to maybe, catch a player off guard, right? You get a support here or something. I mean, it would be a huge advantage as maybe trying to bait Sparker a little bit. Doesn't kind of fall for it, right? Doesn't play for that high ground right away.
The breeze brings relief.
So much to work with him, but VP Psycho living dangerously. Canal could say the same of him because his swift step was on cooldown. Hardy's able to dive on him there. It was close. Psycho getting a lot of attention here. But again, the solo mission from Canal, maybe ill-advised. It's going to force a little bit of a cooldown for Virtus.pro in general.
Yes, you will have for VP, though, you'll have like the Kitsune Rush here in the street if you want to end up using it, right? It's a really strong part of the map for that ultimate. They drop the Kitsune Rush, probably going to be a rally in response, and here it is for Funny Astro, so can't exactly just charge on into it.
Yeah, and Space Station actually back up around the rally, which gives Virtus.pro the space, and also Sorter was very low. He's able to get topped up and sit on the car for a time. Here's the dive now. The Nano here for Rajaro means that he's going to be awful sticky. Both supports fall to his hand. Canale still standing as he was joining Rajaro on the aggressive axis. Still have to deal with 3 Space Station players grouped up around this card. There's a Diva remake available, and Garland's going to be back in the fight pretty quickly now, switching over to that Lucio, who you'll have to contend with a remake from Hardy. And of course, a duplicate is there from Psycho.
Yeah, but breaking this corner is going to be very difficult, right? With players on both sides. They put pressure on Psycho. That's going to force the duplicate out just to be able to stay alive. And now Rajaro backs up, so feels like that's good enough here the start of this fight.
Garland opting to stay on the Ana instead. Brief stint on Lucio, but a switch back. Notice again Canale. This time flanking with swift step up. Do recommend that. Able to get out after pulling a couple SSG players out of position. Rajaro really wants to get past Hardy, but needs to make sure his intended target will be lurking in that area. Garland got dove on. Maybe wrapping around the side, it's unclear. Hardy gets a freebie though there, spotting the Ana out of position.
Yeah, it's, I mean, you can't lose your support in that type of situation. Pretty rough there. So this is going to buy probably another 10, 15 seconds off the clock. And SSG, they have a pretty big advantage here with the Nano, right? You can Nano on the Hottie, you can Nano Psycho, right? The Nano onto the Echo. Even the Brig, pretty good targets as big bio grenade lands from Landon yet again. So that's gonna, VP is gonna have to back up. This is gonna be the Nano on the Hottie, and they actually collapse. So onto Landon, he pushes out, so the Nano comes down, but it's 2 kills for VP right away.
Still looking for that flank pressure with the kunais. He gets Landon down to about 40 HP, which is easy for Sora to come in and finish the job. You don't even have to have 2 dive elements there to pick off the Ana in general. And Hardy, well, yeah, he can only look on now as the checkpoint will be taken. He'll be tempted to be body blocked from rejoining the rest of his team. Instead, it's a D-Mech and a stagger of the baby.
And how it's quite rare. I mean, the Bob in that fight, right? But they get a nice Nano on the Hottie right away. It was really a little bit earlier on. It was a 2-player bio grenade there from Landon. Nice shot from Sparker. But you end up losing the fight. That you end up kind of getting that Nano and charge on in first. Is Sparker just trying to slow down any type of push, right? That picks big, denies Shockwave that high ground control.
Yeah, and it eventually forced Rajaro to give up the high ground on which Sparker is currently perching, waiting for the Diva to back off before he grappled up there, of course. Rajaro here would like to take a midpoint. Hardy gives him a tickle at the very least, but they do allow Virtus.pro to set up there. Now Sparker knows he's only one dash away from being devoured by the Diva, and here comes Rajaro again. Slept briefly, trying to find out where the Widow is, but now he's being forced away. Hardy nicely done with the rocket boosters here to create that space for his backline, but it could...
This late rush,
yeah, Kasuna Rush is going to allow them to close this gap. Rajaro getting topped up very quickly, and here we go, looking into the back corner. Doesn't quite know where the Arnor is. Saw it landed hiding behind some of those pillars. So the Kasuna Rush actually doesn't find any value. It seems Virtus.pro aren't able to rush in off the back of it, and Hardy is still disrupting them, staggering them time and time again. He gets in Rajaro's face once more, and that Diva mech is very, very low. If he forces a self-destruct here for Rajaro, it will be huge, and that sleep is massive.
I mean, it's the sleep plus the Suzu that ends up keeping Rajaro alive, and not just alive, he gets right back up to like full HP here as the cart continuing to move just a little bit, right? You know, Sauna just keeps tickling the cart, moving it a little bit forward as Shockwave now wins that hit scan battle against Sparker. This could open things up.
Which is going to force Landon into a really awkward angle. See, look what he has to do in order to heal his team. Shockwave knows he gets free damage, and now with the infra side, he knows when that Arna's going to be peaking. This is also devastating for Sparker to play into, who doesn't have an infra to match. Shockwave, though, can't see the baby Diva after Hardy demechs. He tucks around the corner, but Rajaro is still able to get him before he can clamber back in. 24 seconds left here. Psycho got a nano boost there, but is unable really to make much use of it. Sparker needs his infra sight now.
Yeah, I mean, they use a nano boost on his Psycho to just kind of threaten that high ground, right? And just deny that space from Shockwave, but it does not matter. His VP, it takes a while to develop, but they end up taking the map there. 12 seconds left in the time.
So many small things there end up making a big difference. Rajaro almost losing his mech, being forced to self-destruct to refresh it sort of before that fight began, but the Suzu came in to keep him in there, and then the sleep was thrown on Hardy. Hardy, of course, had seen an opportunity to maybe force a key ultimate out of Rajaro before the fight had really begun. And then Shockwave switches to the Widow, comes back, takes that mid-high ground position, and all of a sudden, yeah, like makes it really hard for Leonard to heal properly, because in order to do so, he's got to swing out into the open and subject himself to the attentions of the Widow.
Yes, I feel like Shockwave is, it's been hard, right? Because like Sparker like comes in and out and whatnot, right? But I feel like Shockwave, you know, when we've seen that hit scan battle, has really kind of gotten the upper hand at times. So Shockwave putting together a pretty good series, pretty difficult, I think, for Sparker in that type of situation, right? Specifically like hit scan kind of coming in and out of series, right? Like you got to be warm playing against somebody who's been playing hit scan the entire time, like in the flow of the game. It can be quite difficult, specifically, you know, even for a game 5 type of scenario. So we'll see how Space Station goes on offense, potentially hovering this Widow yet again. VP decides not to play the Widow on defense. I think you can get away with the Ashe here. Like the sight line is still pretty good on that high ground, right? She's not gonna have that like one shot potential. As how do you play the Winston here? So not gonna end up playing a Diva.
Can Sparker find space away from Sauna, from Rajaro, from Canale, God forbid, and actually just really punish Shockwave with a range advantage and insta-kill potential? Pretty safe angle that Shockwave's playing right now. Right side of your screen, you see those shots coming out, and Psycho gets picked off here. Yes. Psycho really hoping that Sparker would force Shockwave off of angles to punish the Echo. This doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, Sparker was like almost dead as well. I mean, bow damage just take a ton of damage right off the bat there for Space Station Gaming. So it looked like they were going to make a change there with actually you know, keeping the Widow and putting a Tracer in, but they actually decided to swap both DPS, right? So now Sparkle will end up taking the Tracer responsibilities as Psycho continues to man the Echo. As this is a play for that backline, right? And trying to take advantage of them not having that brig back there.
It's definitely a less common assignment of DPS for Sparker. Space Station going for the Echo Tracer, trying to punish Shockwave, dive on Gala's position. It's going to be, again, the Ana Kiriko setup for Virtus.pro. It's starting to become a bit of signature look. Sparker wants to control the hotel here, does force a swift step from Canale, gets him out of there. Rajaro looking to peel.
Canale's so nasty on the Kiri. Just being able to put down some damage, you don't mind it as much as Rajaro finds Psycho. Psycho is actually like through the choke that first pillar, you know, kind of when we see that first point taken. He was all the way in the back there trying to, you know, put some damage down on the Gali and Canale, but nice peel there from Rajaro as that's a pulse bomb that connects with Landon, so this is going to be some more time.
Yeah, beautiful. Already down 2 minutes here. Virtus.pro doing a great job on this defense. And for Rajaro, that was a simple matter of peeling. He just flew across the map to go and see what Psycho and Sparker were trying to do. They're having problems getting rid of Gala. Canale's always able to swift step in with a Suzu and defend him. Also, Tracer players would know, Kiriko is a bit scary to deal with. His random headshots can end you before the fight can really begin, especially at close range. Hardy looking for Shockwave again. Shockwave can't get the coach gun off before Winston bubbles up here, so it's a nano for Shockwave to keep him alive. That's how much their value having the Bob in the fight, and also this good poke damage. Everybody for Space Station grouped up inside the hotel, and a pulse bomb drop. The Shockwave's feet will claim him, and Hardy can make use of the last of this nano boost. Make some space and push the Virtus.pro backline right into spawn. Somehow the Rajaro's been able to find 2 kills. That's a massive turnaround. He's found both supports. Psycho even trying to dupe the Diva. Eventually, Canale goes down. Virtus.pro might have conceded this either way, but you don't expect Rajaro to be able to get that done with both of his supports caught by primaling Winston.
Well, you still have Sauna here. You're going to have actually Shockwave coming back, so I wonder if you can actually kind of contest here. Yeah, Sauna jumps on. He's just kind of consistently tapping the point. It's a pulse bomb opportunity here for Sauna. You also have a self-destruct, so you're going to be able to keep this going for a while here.
No Suzu up right now for Space Station. That got used on the double bio in the back line, but Rajaro needs help. Focusing beam's a problem. Still gets a self-destruct now. Good bubble there from Hardy, so he won't be affected by the blast, but the problem is trying to dive against Shockwave. There's too much damage to answer. There's only 35 seconds left of the round. VP have staved them off again, and they can cycle this nano boost for Rajaro, or maybe even Shockwave to keep him alive again.
Dude, Rajaro's having a sick series on the Diva, coming up clutch there with both supports, and then doubling back to the point to kind of like, you know, play off and on there with Sauna. As the last fight they end up using that nano on the Shockwave, able to keep him alive, puts out so much damage as well. Wouldn't be surprised if we see that yet again. It'll have to be Space Station King coming up
clutch. Down. Didn't have the defense though, at least able to give a nano over to Rajaro, and they trade out supports. It's going to be Funny Astro going down. Close to a Kitsune Rush is landed, but they're running out of time to make use of it, our Space Station, and that's a nice dynamite hit on a Hardy combined with the pressure of Rajaro, keeping the Winston low. Desperately Landon has to use a Suzu there, but it's a rush to follow it up, and the Pulse Bomb finds a position of Shockwave. Now Space Station have the numbers to work with. Spark is going to run them over, focusing being there for Psycho just to account for the rest of the backline. And Space Station still have some game left in them.
Whoa, it is not easy. It's really Landon's Kitsune Rush being able to get that ultimate, which is massive, right? And then the opening pick on the Gala ends up using that nano boost on the Rajaro, but then falling down to the low ground or being pressured down to the low ground and then not being able to live. But VP does a tremendous job on defense, right? You take a fight maybe around this first corner here, or at least attempt to. You win that, you're in another spot where Space Station has to clutch up into like OT type of scenarios. So VP kind of did their job there at the beginning. Right now they kind of have control over the clock and momentum of the game.
Hardy here just trying to wrap this right flank. Now he's intended to that. Looking more to get behind Rajaro. Force the Diva back. Deny Rajaro the chance to make the space. And Canale's in the back line as per usual. This time it pays off. It's Psycho getting picked up for free. Canale can swift step back to teammates should they need to, and they do. That is dirty stuff from VP. That is Teru level flanking here on the Kiriko.
I haven't heard that one in a bit.
It's only been a year.
It feels like it's been 5. But, you know, you win that fight for VP with just that Bob being in play, right? This is going to force you to kind of use this beat maybe for Funny Astros. He takes a lot of damage there. I think maybe it's just from like the dynamite and whatnot. Maybe it's just Landon healing it up, but what are you going to do? Sound barrier here aggressively. Canale does play in a Teru-like position there, very close to the opponent. Then has to back up, but you're going to have this nano yet again here for VP. So VP, although they're going to have to be going into this sound barrier, still set up pretty decent.
Psycho here's got a lot of dupe left to work with, but forced a recall fairly early. This time actually opt just to deal with Rajaro. The nano boost here giving VP a bit of priority. Kitsune Rush going to be laid into it now as well. They're throwing all of their support ultimates in. Sound barrier here for Space Station Gaming, but they lost Sparker. Still able to burst Canal down. Psycho with a crucial double kill. But is that going to be enough? Sorn and Rajaro, last two standing. They're going to have to fold back on this. And it looks like Space Station will have one fight to try and contest this last part of the map.
I feel like Sona and Rajaro are always alive here for VPs. I think they're going to be able to get another good touch, right? You're going to have Sona here with the D.Va. Pulse Bomb available, self-destruct as well. So an opportunity to keep this one going here for VP as we get into
the remake potential for Rajaro is going to be big. Sparker, though, has a pulse. May have his name on it. Sona just built his. Look at this, though. Virtus.pro with a bit of a concave. They've got good flank pressure, and Sparker has been able to penetrate on that top part of the map. Pulse Bomb goes off for Sona. No connection here. Funny Asteroid low. Very, very low. Able to get away from the fight and stay alive. But Hardy, okay, gets his self-destruct just in time. That will be a remake, and Sparker finds the Pulse. Just the one the Space Station were looking for. Canale can only look on now as Space Station are given an inch and take a mile. They have a chance to finish the map here with 90 seconds to play.
Man, and I think the biggest kill there was probably the opening one onto Shockwave. He's getting so close to the Bob. If you would have just allowed him to just kind of sit there at a different distance and just kind of like farm Hottie or put some shots on a cycle, get that Bob, the Bob would have been devastating to have to deal with there for Space Station Gaming. But Sparker goes huge, like 3 or 4 kills in that fight.
There's that Pulse that really starts things off, and Sparker gets involved on that mech elimination. That's big. Going into this next stage here, Virtus.pro looking to push up on Space Station. Funny Astro, this time they catch it. Yeah, it's deadly to play against the Ash when you're sort of corralled onto that side of this area. Nice little ADS tech there. Beautiful. Virtus.pro now solidifying.
Yeah, now you control high ground, right? Hottie, they'll take a while for him to die, so you're gonna have to just kind of wait another, 5 or 6 seconds or so. You can now control this high ground. It's going to be pretty difficult to kind of break, where you're not going to have them kind of, you're not going to switch here for Space Station Gaming over to like a hit scan, right? What would you even do? So you're going to just kind of continue to run with this. That's going to allow Shockwave, I mean, the big dynamite, that's a dynamite and a bio at the same time connect on the Space Station Gaming.
Desperate Suzu there from Landon, which didn't quite connect onto everyone. All right, there it is. Sparker goes down early. It's going to be Canale yet again with a kunai. And Virtus.pro just back up on this. They see the Kitsune rush, but they don't fully respect it. Dynamite's still going to be thrown into it now. Funny Asteroid does find that sound barrier, but Gala had the nano at the start of the fight. Kitsune rush now comes back from Virtus.pro here, and there are 2 divas on the field for SSG. And they need 3 more to make a difference by the looks of things. Sona able to recall back. Psycho being a nuisance, stalling things out. Canale the menace finally brought down, but Funny Astro was soon after. Sona knows he can sit in the back and stop any stragglers from coming on in. Hardy desperately trying to hang on. Rajano has a D-Mech opportunity now. He can get back in, as can Hardy though. But Spark has fallen. The numbers here are going to favor Virtus.pro as they come back off spawn, and that's a beautiful pulse to take Hardy once more out of that mech. And there's no getting back in here. Suzu there, not enough for Landon. Eventually he's going to be dragged down by Rajaro, and Sona will be here as part of the cleanup crew. Bio came in, but it was superfluous, and Virtus.pro advance here in this upper bracket. Getting these dubs against SSG might have shown us that the tides are turning in EMEA.
And man, what a series between these two teams. Is VP kind of clutch it out at the end. I mean, this is as back and forth as a series can get here to kind of kick off
That's
today.
some good Overwatch, baby.
Yeah, I mean, Canale was sick there, throughout King's Row, right? Really, playing that on Akiri, coming up with some huge kills, playing a really, aggressive style of support there. 2-3 kills at the end, in that final fight, and then Shockwave, just no contest for that hit scan at range there on that last part of the map. But VP, I mean, dude, this is so important as well for like circuit points, right? Like, these EU teams, like it is completely up for grabs, kind of who goes to Stockholm pretty much. A lot can change between now and the end of stage 4. This is a big result.
Upper final is massive for Virtus.pro. We knew they were on the rise, maybe not just how quickly they'd make that happen though. Let's head over to the desk to break down this game. VP advanced to the upper final.
What a match. What a way to start off day 2 here in the main event. EMEA once again delivers. I say that with as much bias as I can possibly muster as a fellow European. And now, Jake, you were right, we were wrong. But quite frankly, if that's the match, I'm happy to be wrong. If that's what the teams deliver, sure, have at it. It was a back and forth, and it came down to the wire.
Yeah, I think the DPS here, Sana and Shockwave, had one of the best series I've ever seen from these players. I mean, both of them firing on all cylinders constantly throughout the series. You know, when Spacestation was able to get the game into their wheelhouse and, you know, bring the pace with the Lucio and make it work, they do look strong, right? That is still their strength. But honestly, Kanale showed his own strength in this game, right? Playing this backline flanking Kiriko. Really risky setup, and it kind of sacks your Ana a lot of the time, but so many times you see that kill coming in on to the Ana or maybe the Ashe, and then instantly, you know, Spacestation are losing their whole backline because Kanale's flank is paying off. Rajaro and Sana are in and they're following up. And they're clutching out these fights. So they're showing a real willingness to make messy fights, but just execute better.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny, you set it up as well in this series. You had your eyes on the tank players here. How are they going up against Rajara? Rajara, relatively new really to competitive Overwatch. I mean, he's just 18 years old, a little protege starting this year really to ramp it up in Tier 1. He more than held his own. That was a fantastic series.
Yeah, it's really impressive how he's come into professional Overwatch like this and just competes with the very best teams in the region. I definitely agree with that. And it's impressive how much value they're getting with these Diva and Tracer dives, right? Because Diva has some deficiencies compared to like Winston, for example. But like Jake mentioned, I think Kanale on the Kiriko really enables them to go for those kind of plays, right? And then Gala as well does the most he can to try and survive in the backline and then feeds the nanos onto the Diva as well to enable those dives. Sana, player of the match, can't disagree with that. I think, you know, Kanale is definitely in the mix because of compositionally what he adds to this Diva kind of composition they're playing, right? But Sana was just on fire with these pulse bombs all series.
Yeah, I mean, his performance on the Tracer, he's really been having a bit of a renaissance in his play. You know, think of him as a really flexible player, but being, you know, this elite on the Tracer is something that's necessary in Europe, right? Like, you're competing against Psycho, Kevster, some of the best Tracers in the game right now. You've got to be bringing the heat, and Sana is, you know, going blow for blow in this series, coming out on top. Of course, there's a lot of team play involved, but you got to credit Sana for being a huge factor here in this win.
I love that players like Sana or Shockwave and whatnot, like you call it the Renaissance, I call it the Revenge org. They were players that really went under the radar in Tier 1 before OWCS. Now they finally have a platform and an opportunity to really step into the limelight.
Yeah, I mean, it might sound silly, but like they made this happen for themselves, right? You know, they made this OWCS team work with a lot of those kind of players, right? Like putting it all together. Shockwave, obviously a huge veteran, been around the block. Vancouver Titans, Philadelphia Fusion, and now just finds himself on a Virtus.pro roster. You know, he was a bit of like the guiding light for quite some time on this roster, right? But we even saw Sana, who saw some time on the bench in the Overwatch League last year. Now, you know, showing what he can do on the Tracer. So really impressive from this team to gain these kind of results, right?